Alright, yeah, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. We're going back in for another best of three, and this one this week is going to be my grind deck of choice. This is the one that I'm going to be running through ranked with, because I think it's actually pretty well positioned in the format right now, and that is Mono Green Stompy with a little bit of a splash for Domri's Ambush in the main. So Domri's Ambush being a fight spell that you can use with your big green creatures to hit planeswalkers as well as creatures, so very versatile in that. And then the rest is into sideboard tech for dealing with the meta. So yeah, this is basically a mono green Stompy list. It pretty much speaks for itself, but the reason why I think it's kind of well positioned for the meta right now is because it's nice and quick. We do have the turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion, so turn 1 Llanowar Elves into turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion. That gives us a 5/4 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. I should mention as well that this main deck, as you see it right now, has actually been doing me quite well in the best of ones. So if you're interested in just playing best of one, then the deck as you see it right now is actually pretty good all the same. I wouldn't really change too much about it at all. We also have the Pelt Collectors as our 1-drop as well, so that we can get nice and quick off with some decent damage. There is a little bit of a counter synergy in this deck as well. So Pelt Collector is a 1-mana 1/1. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield or dies, if it had greater power than Pelt Collector, then Pelt Collector gets a +1/+1 counter on it, and then as long as it's got 3 or more counters on it, essentially, if it's a 4/4 or higher, it actually gains trample. So as I mentioned, a little bit of a counter synergy. We have Domri's Ambush as our fight spell, which puts a +1/+1 counter on our creatures. We have Barkhide Troll as well, which is a 2-mana 3/3, enters with a counter on it, and you can pay 1 to remove a counter to give it hexproof until the end of the turn, which means that our early game creatures are quite hard to interact with, so heavy removal spell decks are going to need board wipes and things like that against us. Same thing kind of goes for the Shifting Ceratops as well, like Esper uses 3 fairy a lot to try and tempo aggro decks out of the game by bouncing their creatures. We can get to a Shifting Ceratops as early as turn 3, and that gives us a 5/4 that has protection from 3 fairy. Also can't be countered as well, which is not too relevant in this format right now. There are a lot of this spell can't be countered based effects at the moment right now, which is kind of stopping people from wanting to play counter magic, but it's just there as a little hedge. In the sideboards for most of these control decks, they might probably bring in some counter magic all the same, so this one is useful regardless of whether it's game 1 or game 2 or game 3. We can also pay green as well to give it reach, trample, or haste, so if we want to go for that 5-mana 5/4 with haste, we can get right through our opponent's board wipes and things like that, which is very nice. I also have Growth Chamber Guardian as well, another hard to remove threat, because if we actually get to turn 3, we get to adapt 2, which means we put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Again, the counter synergy is in effect here, so we have basically kind of a 2-mana 4/4, but with a little bit of extra effort having to go into it. But it does say whenever 1 or more counters are put on the Growth Chamber, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber. So if we use Growth Chamber to fight a creature with Domri's Ambush, we get to search up another Growth Chamber Guardian. It does mean that we can't adapt, so we can only keep it as a 3/3 unless we use Vivien Arcbow Ranger, which is another linchpin of the deck, a 4-mana 4 loyalty planeswalker. The +1 allows us to distribute 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 2 creatures we control, or up to 2 target creatures. You wouldn't really want to put them on a creature anyway that you don't control. And they gain trample until the end of the turn, so if our opponent's got a field full of 1/1 blockers, not only does Steel Leaf Champion not care, but everything else that has trample also suddenly stops caring, which is pretty sweet. Other than that, yeah, if we use the +1 to stick counters on the Growth Chamber Guardian, we get our Guardians again. If we use it to do it on the Barkhide Troll, then we have additional layers of hexproof protection there, as well as giving it a nice little damage boost at the same time. And if we're adding all of these counters, that does mean that we're actually increasing the power of our board state as well, which means that our Golter on our top end, our 12-mana 12/12, actually comes down a hell of a lot earlier, because this one costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. So we can go like turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion, and we've got 6 power on the board, which gives Golter a 6 cost reduction, which means it's only costing 8 at that point. And yeah, as soon as like turn 4, we can get this Golter down, ready to go. We basically shut down aggro in that kind of way, because if you think about mono red, and this is why it's pretty good for best of 1 right now, if you think about mono red, if they are to try play the control strategy, then they're very much into spot removal, using their burn to get rid of all of your creatures. However, a lot of our good creatures are actually X4s, or they're kind of irrelevant and don't really need a burn spell put on them anyway. So like if we do put turn 1 Pelt Collector, they have to use their Firebrand, or have to clear the way using like a burn spell, a shock or something like that, so they can get in with their pyromancers, things like that. So very useful in that regard. We end up having our opponent playing the control game, and they tend to lose quite a lot, mostly because they get rid of all of these 1/1s to get their attacks in so that they can spectacle, and then we drop down a Steel Leaf Champion or a Ceratops, and if they don't have a Lava Coil, they have nothing for these, and we basically roll right over them with more power than they can put out, essentially. So that is pretty much the main deck. As I mentioned, we're only splashing red into the main for the Domri's Ambush, so we're going to be going with the 15 Forests, 4 Rootbound Crags, and 4 Stomping Grounds. The 8 sources is more than enough. As long as we've got 1 red source, we can play everything in our deck effectively. So the Domri's Ambush may or may not be useful regardless as well. So there's a lot of matchups where that's pretty good. And the sideboard is where we're actually going to be pretty good against quite a lot of the meta decks. I think the only exception is really Vampires and Jund Dinos. Jund Dinos can almost get out quicker than us, I believe. Unless we're on the play, then we can like ambush their Marauding Raptors and things like that. Against the Vampires list, it's just mostly a game of attrition. It's whoever runs out of steam first wins. But the sideboard actually gives us pretty much a decent chance against the rest of the meta, though. So let's go on to that, shall we? Cindervines kind of speaks for itself. It is a Gruul-coloured enchantment that gives us some game against the Nexus list. So whenever our opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervines deals 1 damage to that player. So that basically means our opponent is incapable of making an infinite turn loop. It's also pretty good against basically non-creature decks as well. If you have spare slots against the control matchups, which you shouldn't really in this one because we're pretty well set up to beat them all the same, then you can bring in Cindervines for that. It's also our source of enchantment and artifact removal if we want it that way. We also have the Reclamation Sages, because I didn't actually forget to mention the -3 on Vivien allows us to fight creatures as well, or deal damage equal to our power. We don't actually fight, so as long as our creatures are matching theirs, we can actually destroy them, which is pretty cool. And the -5 actually lets us grab creatures out of our sideboard as well. So we do have the Grafdigger's Cages up here, which allow us to graveyard hit our opponent for just 1 mana. Also shuts off Experimental Frenzy as well, so giving us that extra little edge against the mono red decks. And our opponent can't cast spells from graveyards and libraries. We shut down Command the Dreadhorde with this one as well. Blood Sun, obviously, it goes against the Scapeshift decks. Field of the Dead does not work when Blood Sun is in play, and we also get to draw a card as well, so we get a nice little replacement effect there. They do have 3 Fairy as well, which is something that we should concern ourselves with, but if we have 2 Blood Suns down, we should be okay, short of them having something like Deputy of Detention, but that's a hell of a lot of work. We can also bring in, against that matchup, a Flame Sweep as well, a 3-mana instant that deals 2 damage to each creature, except creatures you control with flying. So if they do manage to bounce the Blood Sun and then Scapeshift, well, we can actually then go straight into a Flame Sweep, because presumably the way that they're bouncing this is going to be by 3 Fairy, so they're not going to be ticking up to be able to Scapeshift at instant speed, in theory. That means that on our turn, then we can cast a Flame Sweep and wipe the board, hopefully winning the game at that point. We also have the Deathgorge Scavenger. As I mentioned, the Vivien -5 does allow us to grab creatures out of our graveyard, so a Deathgorge Scavenger here is graveyard hate in the Game 1 scenario, and it's something that Vivien can pull as well. So if we do need our Grafdigger's Cages, but we have a Vivien ult available, then there is a Deathgorge Scavenger in here for us to grab. 2 Reclamation Sages probably could go down to 1 for an extra slot, to be honest, but future me here, I actually did end up cutting the 2nd Reclamation Sage, going up a Crawl Harpooner just to give us a little bit more edge against the mono blue tempo lists, as well as like Jeskai's Super Friends, so at least we've got a chump blocker against the Sarkhan Mastless Tick-Up. Again, this is more enchantment and artifact hate. We do have it in the Cindervines, I suppose, but I do like having the Reclamation Sage. As I mentioned, this might actually just be a one-off. It depends kind of how the meta is going to shift. Godatil and Ronus is just purely here for a Vivien minus. It allows us to double the power of all of our creatures, so we can go in for that final swing, as well as giving them vigilance as well, so we can block. And once it's in play, it's a 5/5 death touch that keeps recurring over and over again, so it's very hard for the control matchups to deal with a card like this. Speaking of, finally, we have 2 copies of Carnage Tyrant to add to the annoyance of Shifting Ceratops, which will be carrying the game against the control matchups. Just being able to be uncounterable and having protection from blue gives us a lot of leverage over a lot of decks. Same thing goes for Carnage Tyrant. Can't be countered is very nice, so a 6 mana 7/6 with trample and hexproof. Basically, it's going to be a 2 or 3 turn clock once Carnage Tyrant comes down, so they really have to deal with Carnage Tyrant right on the spot, so we can hold all of our other creatures until after they blow the board wide, for example, with a Carnage Tyrant, and then just slam down our entire board and hopefully just kind of aggro, tempo, mid-range them kind of out of the game that way. So that's essentially the deck, guys. I hope you enjoy this one. If you do like the look of the deck, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe once the gameplay is done. It helps out the channel a great deal. If you do enjoy it, I really appreciate anyone who decides to do so. Without further ado, let's get into some gameplay and showcase this deck. Okay, we're in, and we've got turn 1 Pelt Collector into turn 2 Pelt Collector, so this one's a little bit slow. We don't have our turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion, which is kind of the nightmare of Dominaria, but I feel like we can maybe keep this one on the draw. We've got a lot of 2-drops in this deck. We're very kind of low to the ground, even though Golta would have you think otherwise. So I'm happy with this one. There's a very good chance that we do draw a 2-drop. It's eventually a 2-drop, I suppose. Alright, I'm just going to go with the Pelt Collector. I'm happy to shock myself against a matchup like this, which looks to be Elementals, I guess? How do we fare against Elementals? And do I go with a Barkhide Troll here? We don't really get any extra damage in by doing that, so I guess I'm just going to play Pelt Collector and then not shock myself. Say go. Then we can do Barkhide Troll, pump the Pelt Collectors into Steel Leaf Champion, pump the Pelt Collectors as well. It's very good, this deck, for pumping these, because we have lots of 2/2s and 3/3s, or 3/2s. Very easy to always have a creature here to actually pump them. And if we don't, we have the Vivien to actually add counters that way as well. Alright, so they do have the Risen Reef, and we are struggling a little bit with our draws, not gonna lie. These are not the draws I'm looking for. Okay, well, we'll just get in for 2. That's all we really can do. And the question is, are they Simic or are they struggling for black? There's a lot of Sultai Elementals and Temur Elementals going around right now. This could be... It could be any number of things, honestly. Risen Reef's just too good not to run. I guess maybe it's just like Simic Ramp, something like that. Please. Please, Magic. Don't do me like this. This is unacceptable. But yeah, we've got some 5/5 Goltas, so if I ever manage to play a Steel Leaf Champion, that means I can Golta the turn after, and not much of this board state ends up mattering at that point when they're forced to chump block a 12/12 with Trample. But we have to get there first, and the game is very much not interested in letting us do that. I'm curious as to whether they'll attack him with the Krasis. I think they probably won't. They've got the Nut Draw though, Jesus Crimbus. Alright, draw 3. Yeah, we're probably going to lose now. This is not ideal, this right here. We are running 23 lands, but we do have Mana Dorks in here to make up for it. I very rarely find this Mana Screw to be the case, though. So it's a little bit unnatural what you're seeing here. I guess you got to trust me on that one. There we go. Alright. So now we get a Steel Leaf Champion, which pumps up the Pelt Collectors. A lot of power on board, and now we've got a Golta coming down for 2 next turn, so we definitely have something to do. We could even, if we draw a land, do Vivien minus Steel Leaf Champion on something, maybe if they're holding back blockers. But anything that comes down next turn is going to put the Pelt Collectors into a trampling position, which is pretty sweet. Alright, Growth Spiral without hitting a land, and they've got their 5/6s. Okay. Yeah, I think like Vivien minus on Cavalier's looking pretty good. Because this actually just deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So we'll be 1-for-1ing, but with a kind of Vivien activation around. Oh, they've got Nexus in here as well. Oh boy. So that probably means it's game over, right? They don't have the mana for it though. But next turn, actually 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they will one shot. They can start taking extra turns now, which is unfortunate. Hopefully we can do like Galter so that their blocks aren't particularly good, and then they're kind of leveraging... Ooh, that's very good. They're kind of leveraging just like Hydroid Crisis as their only attacker. So it's kind of good. As I mentioned, we can actually stick a counter on like Steel Leaf Champion to fight the Cavalier of Thorns. We do give them back a Nissa if I do that though. So I'm a little less inclined to do that. I guess what I really want is just like Galter down to block. Hope to run them out of Nexuses. And see if we can carry the game from there. It's such a weird place to be though, because if I get these down to 4/4s, we've got some decent blocks everywhere except for these two right here. And Galter gives us that against the Cavalier, I suppose, so... I think we're just going to have to run with this and hope that it gets us there. And we can't attack because Cavalier can block the Steel Leaf quite well. I think there's a little bit of hope for us, but I don't think it's very much, because of course... Oh, they're doing Temple into Nexus? Well, that ruins their Scry. Yeah, because this gets shuffled in. So a little bit of a sequencing error from our opponent there. I've fallen for that a few times myself, in fairness, so... Oh, they're just taking 2 extra turns. Alright. Well, if they had Nexus in their hand, there's another thing that you can do if you're playing a Nexus list, and that is set a stop on your draw step, or your upkeep, if you have one in hand. Because if you set one on your upkeep, you can shuffle it into your deck, and then from that point forward, when you get to your draw step, there's a chance that that shuffled card is just right back on top. So they have an extra turn here. So we're going down another 4 at least. Looks like they've got a big Hydroid Crisis. We should be able to fight it with a Domri's Ambush. And are they tapping out 4, 5? They still have enough for Nexus if they find it. Since the Leafkin Druid and the Llanowar Elves are here, that's another 3 mana. So this is us hoping that they don't have Nexus off of those 3 draws. It's probably unlikely, right? This feels like one of those situations as well where Cindervines against the Nexus deck is not particularly effective.
Every story is an opportunity for new data.
Not particularly effective because they've got plenty of options here. Gonna go Leafkin Druids, draw 3 cards. So this is our turn. Is there actually a way that we can win here? I'm thinking probably not. I think they've just got too many chump blockers. Oh, they've also got the extra turn as well. I forgot about the extra turn. So, yeah, we're just going to scoop this one up. If we had the extra turn, if we got our turn there, we could Domri's Ambush, either the Cavalier or the Hydroid Crisis, and we'd have had some good attacks, but the blocks on the way back would not be profitable for us. Alright, so that was a bit rough. Flame Sweep doesn't seem particularly effective. It hits Risen Reefs, but we're not too interested in that side. We never saw Field of the Dead, so we don't have to worry about that. I guess we just want Cindervines against extra turns. Though again, I'm not really sure it's worth bringing in. We had a very unlucky draw as well, so was the speed of our draw actually what killed us there? I think it might have been, honestly. We just had some Pelt Collectors that weren't really doing much, and just hitting 3 Galters was not ideal, so there's a little bit of variance in the way. We definitely want the Domri's ambushes because we want to be able to murder Risen Reefs the moment they come out, which we can do with Pelt Collectors and Llanowar Elves very easily. Reclamation Sage was pretty dead. We got to think about what they're going to be bringing in against us as well. And I'm not sure there is too many sideboard tech cards that actually do tech against mono green, so I imagine they're probably bringing in roughly the same as what they did before. Maybe counter magic, but I doubt they've got anything for creatures. That's probably more non-creature stuff. Crawl Harpooner looked very good. I could see actually like one Reclamation Sage in the sideboard going down for a Crawl Harpooner, since there is like mono blue tempo occasionally showing up and things like that. Yeah, I'm just not sure how much Cindervines is going to help, so I'm just going to go up one of them. And from there, this is protection from blue, so this is uncounterable and unblockable. I'm just going to go down a Golter, because I think Shifting Ceratops can carry us. Yeah, something that can't be blocked by pretty much all of their creatures in Shifting Ceratops is very useful. So Risen Reef can't block it, though they won't want to. Hydroid Crisis also can't block it. This hand looks disgustingly good, so we're going to take this one. We got the turn 2 Pelt Collector. From there, we can either play a creature if they do nothing, pumping Pelt Collector to 2, meaning these Domri's Ambush are going to deal for 3, which is going to be very nice. We get another Pelt Collector, which is not terrible, but also not necessarily ideal. Yeah, we should be able to kill most things that they play here. We'll just hold our Rootbound Crag. We don't want to show them red just yet. Got to hold as much information as possible, and we have no double reds, so we have nothing to worry about there. And here's a Risen Reef, which means we're absolutely going to be firing off a Domri's Ambush. Or we could just do Vivien. Vivien, make them fight. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker. I think this is just much better, because this establishes a planeswalker on board.
Tearing this place to the ground.
As well as removing something from them and leaving us with an extra little bit of advantage. So we don't have to use the Domri's Ambush, but we're going to. So we're going to stick a counter on each Pelt Collector and then Domri's Ambush to fight Risen Reef by the looks of things. Or maybe even a... I was going to say maybe a Druid thingamajig. The 0/3s elementals. Alright, distribute the counters. Want to distribute them on, obviously, the ones without Summoning Sickness for multiple reasons.
This'll be fun to watch.
Indeed it will. Do I actually want to pressure with the extra power on my active Pelt Collectors, or do I want to put the other Pelt Collector in range? I think I can just do this on my current ones, see if they're running negates. I feel like they probably wouldn't want to bother. Just going to Growth Spiral. Alright, well we do have a chump blocker on a land if they've got Nissa, and then we've actually got the active defeat of Nissa to follow it up, so yeah, this is a classic case of us just having the open advantage and our opponent being on the back foot for the entire game. So they can play whatever they want here, and we should be able to answer it easily enough. Okay. So 5/6 is awkward. But we can stick 2 counters on this Pelt Collector. And then we can Domri's Ambush, kill Cavalier of Thorns. Doesn't really matter what we're going to give them back, it's just going to be a Risen Reef, most likely. But our board state's way too advanced at this point for that to matter. Unless they're running Root Snares, which is definitely a possibility in a Simic deck like this one with Nexus. I actually missed Lethal there because I could have done this, so that's a bit of an oops from me. Yeah, play this first and we get 3 counters on all of our creatures. I don't think it'll matter, because even if they have like White Source, Deputy of Detention, we still kill them. But yeah, definitely a sequencing error on my part there. And they've got to deal with a 7/7, a 12/12, a 3/3, and a 2/2. If we draw any creatures, all of our creatures will have trample. Nissa, who shakes the world, cannot get through.
Witness the ties that bind us all.
Can they can't even do a Nexus loop here? 4, 5, 6, yeah. They need 7 mana for the Nexus. A River's Rebuke. Okay, well that's tilting, except for we win. Shifting Ceratops. Give it haste. And this is why we're pretty good against like board wipes. It's just because Shifting Ceratops exists. So, got to play around River's Rebuke, I guess. They almost got us, I guess. But we ended up managing to close out that game. Should be noted as well that that island could block Shifting Ceratops. So, we do have protection from blue, but lands, even though they actually generate a colour of mana, they are actually colourless by definition. So, they should be able to block the Shifting Ceratops just fine. However, my opponent tapped out for that River's Rebuke and got themselves killed. Yeah, that went really well. I don't think we changed too much about what happened there. I'm very much into everything that happened there. I like the idea of the Galter. It was very useful. I think, honestly, I would probably just go down that Cindervines and go up the Galter. They're not really trying for infinite turns, so I shouldn't really tech against it, to be honest. I think they're just trying to get down a big Hydroid Crisis and then take enough extra turns which they can increase the odds of since they're Risen Reefing constantly. So we want a hand that can kill a Risen Reef, and this is certainly one of them. Yeah, with your opener with this deck, you want to make sure that you are presenting your opponent with a deck that, or a hand that can actually beat their opening hand. So mine is very rampy, and it deals with what is likely to be their first card that they play down, which will be Risen Reef. So we're going to go with... We could add to the board, so we could do Llanowar Elves and Barkhide Troll. I don't think I'm against that. Or we could do Stomping Ground. This could be our opportunity to do that. I don't think we need to, because Domri's Ambush is our only red card, and we have untapped mana here in red. So I think we're just going to not deal 1 damage here on the opportunity that we deal a lot more damage. It's going to be 5 damage to them on their next turn. Actually 6 damage, because Domri's Ambush is most likely going to hit a Risen Reef here. We can be pretty confident in that being the case. So let's see what they go with. We know they're running Mass Bounce. They could be running Little Bounce as well in like blink of an eye. Kind of expect them to run Root Snares, but we never saw any of that last game. I don't know. They're probably trying to be a little bit more mid-rangey or... bouncing my Llanowar Elves, that's fine. It's awkward, because we would have been able to Arcbow Ranger there, but I'll accept it. Leaving 1 mana open here, so that we can use the Barkhide Troll's ability. I don't think it'll be relevant, but you just never know, right? So, let's get him for 3. We've added to the board. Vivien's coming down next turn, and yep, they had a really bad draw, I guess. So, smashing Simic Ramp and going on up. Very good. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was a little bit of a shorter game than I expected, but I guess we managed to showcase exactly how to beat this deck. I was not expecting Selective Snare, but yeah, I guess they wanted all the Mass Bounce in the world. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, though. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe as well for some more content like this in the future. We will be back later tomorrow with some more... Is this Gruul Stompy or is this Green Stompy? Let me know down in the comment section below, because I'm undecided. I think... I don't know. I see a lot of, like, when Mono White was going popular, we ended up having, like, the Blue-White variant that just ran negates in the sideboard, and that was it. And they called it Blue-White. I was kind of against calling it Blue-White, so I don't know. I personally feel like this is Green Stompy with a splash, just to make sure it has sideboard tech. But, yeah, let me know down in the comment section below what you feel about that. I'm sure it's going to divide a lot of people, and I can't possibly please everyone, but, yeah, I guess... I'm going to call this Green Stompy from this point forward. But thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.